Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Claudine Russell, the Chairman of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to this meeting of the committee. The meeting will be broadcast live and recorded for playback on the Council's YouTube channel. Will anybody else be recording the proceedings? I just ask so that people at the meeting will know if this will be happening. Councillor Mackay, look to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I reserve my right to record or photograph as I see fit. Thank you very much.
Perfect, thank you. If the fire alarm sounds, please remain seated. Members of Democratic Services will assess the situation and give you further instructions on the evacuation of the building if necessary. That takes us on to our agenda this evening. So item 1 is apologies, and I've received apologies from Councillors Houlihan and Parfitt. Item number 2, substitute members. Can anyone, I know that Councillor Perry is substituting for Councillor Parfitt, and I can't see any other substitutions. Item 3 is our urgent item. So we've got one urgent item and 2 urgent updates for the committee tonight. So the urgent item is item 15, the receipt of the call-in Earl Street Public Realm Improvement Scheme, which was published on Thursday, and the copies of the amended agenda were sent out in the post. The first urgent update we've got is item 13, the Cabinet Forward Plan, which as usual will highlight the changes made to the plan since the agenda was published. And then we've got a second urgent item update, which is to item 14, the MTFS, which includes an additional recommendation related to fees and charges, and paper copies have been circulated to the committee today. So just to remind you that you should have 4 things in front of you on your table. If we need to adjourn to read through any of those in more detail when we get there, please let me know. Is that agreed? Item 4, are there any visiting members? Councillor Dawes, which item were you wanting to speak on?
On item 14, please.
Lovely, thank you. Item 5, are there any disclosures by members or officers? Can't see anybody indicating. Item 6, are there any disclosures of lobbying? Can't see anyone indicating. So item 7, I move that all items be taken in public unless any member wishes to refer to the exempt appendix to item 15, which is the receipt of the call-in Earl Street Public Realm Improvement Scheme, in which case the committee will move into closed session due to the likely disclosure of exempt information for the reasons specified on the papers, having applied the public interest test. Is that agreed? Councillor Cook, you've got your hand up.
Just like to raise the question if and whether we discuss it now. I'd like to. I've read the papers and the reason for the yellow papers. I'd like to record that I actually disagree with the rationale. I think this is a paper that can and should be heard in public. I don't accept the the public interest is and the potential interest of the council's financial position in respect of a commercial transaction could be compromised by having the number in the public domain. This is ratepayers' money, and we're here to act on their behalf. They are entitled to know and should be able to know, and the commercial transaction would be subject to people coming in and bidding to provide the service that's required. That's the consideration of that may need to be, but what we're proposing to budget and potentially spend on this, I think to keep that disclosed from the public domain is frankly inappropriate. Can we challenge? Can we, Madam Chairman, challenge it and put it to the vote? Whether we agree, whether we as a committee agree with that.
I get where you're going with this, Councillor Cook. It's been agreed by the proper officer, so I'm afraid we can't. It's in part 2.
Can I have my objection?
Yes, you can.
To this, please.
We'll get that recorded, of course.
Thank you.
Can you record my objection as well?
Of course. Right, so item 7, as I've said, I'll move that all items be taken in public unless we stray into mentioning the amount which is on the yellow papers. Is that agreed? Apart from the 2 that have registered there. dissent. Item 8, we've got minutes of the meeting that are held on the 14th of January 2026, pages 1 to 4 of your agenda pack this evening, on the main one, we'll see. Are there any comments on the accuracy of the minutes? I can't see anybody indicating, so I move that the minutes of the meeting held on the 14th of January be approved as a correct record and signed. Is that agreed? Thank you very much, and I'll sign those in due course. Item 9, we don't have any petitions this evening. Item 10, we haven't got any questions from local residents. Item 11, we haven't got any questions from members, which takes us to item 12 of this evening's agenda, which is the Cabinet Forward Plan. So as usual for us, an update to the forward plan's been circulated to the committee. Any items being greyed out cannot be considered for pre-decision scrutiny. It's too late in the committee cycle. Any item highlighted in yellow is new to the plan. So I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to have a read through and let me know if there are any items which the committee would like to conduct pre-decision scrutiny on. Councillor Cook?
And it is a question, and it relates to, on page 9, the housing asset management strategy and the 30-year asset plan for residential accommodation owned and managed by the council. I just think that this is something, rather than leaving something as important as this entirely to Cabinet, this would be a good subject, given our own look at some issues around housing, to bring in to have a closer look at it and scrutinise. That is, unless we could be given some assurance that basically the plan's not changing and we're just going on as before. But if there are changes, I think they need to be looked at. This has just appeared on here, so are we able to have a little bit more information and then make a decision?
I turn to members of the Cabinet or officers that are present. Is there anyone that could give us a bit more information on that one? Mr.
Yes, Councillor Russell, I'm happy to give you information. There aren't any critical decisions in the strategy. It's reflecting, though, how the council's housing portfolio is managed, and it's a matter of good practice to set it out in this way. I think your committee would find it interesting, but there aren't any decisions inherent in it which I think would come as a surprise to you.
Councillor Cook, is that okay?
Yeah, could I propose, Madam Chairman, that clearly that this is going to have policy implications, and maybe there's no decisions, but it's going to set out a strategy, and that is going to commit us as a council to that strategy. I think it is interesting. I think it's a big subject, and for it just to sail through on the nod, I don't think is appropriate, and I would move that we invite officers and Cabinet to make a presentation to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Cook. I'll hear from Councillor Harper on this.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, no, I'd like to second that. When I looked at this, that was one of the two items I thought we should perhaps consider for pre-decision scrutiny. Councillor Cook's really said most of it. Obviously, Maidstone Council only exists now for another 2 years. So for 28 years, this asset plan will relate to our successors. So I think we do need to ensure that it's given the widest discussion within the council, because we are committing successor authorities to us and Cabinet or whatever the new system will be for 28 years. So I'd second that as coming in for pre-decision scrutiny. My other question was on the next page, on page 11, which is the river and nature restoration. Just wondered if we could have a bit more of a feel as to the type of report that would be, the sort of likely way it's looking at, because obviously it's talking about projects to support farmers, engagement with landowners, and coordination of river and nature restoration. Again, to me, that sounds like that's quite a long-term project, and it's the same issue about the fact that this council will only be in a sort of decision-making process for the next 10 months or so. So I wonder whether, we could have some more information on that. Otherwise, I wonder if it might be worth, and depending on that, it may or may not be worth calling in.
Okay, I can see the leader indicating, so if you'd mind giving us a bit more information on the river and nature restoration. Thank you.
So the current thinking is a 2-year project, bringing in a project manager to work with the farming clusters and landowners to work up bids from other organisations to restore the river belt, and it's going to be focused on the river belt, we feel, at the moment. That's where we've got to. We've already had some initial discussions with people like Kent Wildlife Trust who have done this up at the upper belt.
Thank you. I'll turn to Councillor Field now.
Thank you. On the subject of the housing asset management strategy, I'd have to disagree with the comment that it's going through on the nod. It is a policy document being updated with consultee body being the Housing and Community Cohesion Policy Advisory Committee, so I'd imagine the Policy Advisory Committee would advise on the policy. I don't see what overview and scrutiny adds, personally.
Thank you. Right, so I've got, did you want a proposal for the river and nature restoration one, Councillor Harper, or are you content with the explanation?
Unless anybody else thinks we should call it in, I'm content to leave it and I'll discuss it with Stuart outside the meeting.
Okay, so the proposal that we've got is to call in the housing asset management strategy. I've got a proposer and a seconder on that. So votes in favour? Votes against? Okay, we're going to leave that one be. And I can't see anybody else indicating on that item, so that takes us to the committee work programme, which is item 13 on our agenda, pages 18 to 19. And hopefully you all know where we are with that. We had our first meeting today of the working group, so that was excellent. And on that basis, I move that the work programme be noted. Is that agreed? Thank you. That takes us to item 14 of tonight's agenda, and it's the medium-term financial strategy and final savings proposals and capital programme, pages 20 to 152 of your agenda pack. And this report will be introduced by Cabinet Member for Corporate Resources, Councillor Summersgill. Over to you.
Thank you. The background of this report and the related reports to Cabinet going on 11th of February and Council on 25th of February represent the final stage in setting a budget for next year. The budget proposals were considered by the PACs and the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in January, and no changes were proposed in the January meetings or at CTCS PAC last week to these budget proposals, but there are some updates which are set out in this report. The proposals set out in the report will allow the Council to set a balanced budget for 2026-27. The updates that I mentioned before are an allocation of £5,000 per annum for the next 2 years, included to support the member proposal to tackle period poverty, which is in paragraph 221 of your documents. The Medway Bridge project is now included in the capital programme with an allocation of £4 million in paragraph 222. And the park at Maidstone East is shown as a separate item in the capital programme in paragraph 223. In order to support the Corporate Strategy Year 2 Action Plan, a review of earmarked reserves has also been undertaken and resources identified for the following. For economic development, 1.5 million, a major works sinking fund, £500,000, Lock Meadow improvements, £250,000, and Healthy Living Centre, £50,000. The summary of this budget is the overall impact of Maidstone Borough Council's budget will be an additional £9, 3% increase for all Band D council taxpayers in the Maidstone Borough precept. Taking account of all precepts, the increase in Band D council tax, including KCC and the fire and police, will be an increase of £96.27, which is 4.1%. Thank you. The recommendations are set out on pages 2021. Council's asked to approve these when setting a budget for next year.
Thank you very much. We've also got Mark Green with us, Director of Finances and Resources, to help answer any questions. And I've got Councillor Harper was the first to indicate, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, we didn't have as detailed a discussion on the budget at our corporate policy advisory committee last week, because obviously the situation with Stuart and his accent, so we kept the meeting as quick as we can. So I've got a number of points I would have asked at that meeting, plus a couple of points picking up from what the Cabinet member, Councillor Summerskill, just said. And these are a mixture of questions and statements. I would only ask how, given a Section 24 notice is likely to come in October, at which point we won't be able to unilaterally undertake any new capital commitments without the approval of Kent County Council and whatever other authorities we're being merged with. Are we going to be able to spend or contractually commit £4 million between now and October to a bridge we haven't had any discussion about, a location yet to be confirmed, let alone discussions with Kent County Council and the Environment Agency? Now, I support the idea, but I just wonder whether it's particularly practical, bearing in mind the October deadline for decisions to be able to be made by this authority in isolation. Moving on to some of the other specifics in the papers, I just noticed with interest in paragraph 2.6, the government's assuming inflation is going to be 1.7% over the course of the next year, which I would think optimistic is probably an understatement. I think our assumptions of 2.5% and 3% plus an additional 1% for pay is much more realistic. Looks to me like the government is heading us towards, or our successors, into an austerity period on those assumptions in terms of inflation running at under 1% for the subsequent 2 years. If I go on page 27, paragraph 2.25 on the reserves, understand obviously we need to re-earmark some of our money. I just wanted to really confirm that the £1.5 million, my understanding for that in terms of economic development is to address issues around the town centre and in particular the indices of deprivation and so on, which we've become aware of recently as a council, probably largely as a result of the conversion of most of our office blocks into temporary accommodation for London boroughs. So it would be useful to just have a bit of clarity on that. And then on paragraph 2.35, I notice our minimum level of reserves is to be kept at £4 million, and that's a figure we've operated at, I think, since I came onto this council about 11 years ago. But it does make me think that we do have unallocated reserves, I think, as is in that same paragraph, of £16.5 million. Now, we need £4 million, so that's £12.5 million. My big concern is that that money has been, I was going to say earned, but that's probably not the right word. That money has been put aside to be spent on the residents and businesses and so on of Maidstone, the Maidstone community. Now, unless we start to use stuff pretty quick, we will just be handing that over as an endowment to a new council, which is most likely not going to be given money of that size from any of its other authorities. So it could well be, if we don't think how we can spend some of that over the next few months, that we will be handing a massive gift to a new authority when other local authorities we're merging with won't be doing a similar thing, and missing opportunities. I mean, I'm moving on to page 32. I will just express my scepticism again around the housing, the temporary housing. I would love to see those figures being achieved, the £323,000 saving, but I say, having been on the council for 11 years, whilst we've been doing projects such as buying up houses in the commercial sector to reduce homelessness, and whilst we've been working on the 1,000 affordable homes, even doing all those things, we've still found increasing housing needs. And I just wonder whether the reforms to the private rented sector coming through in the next 2 years are likely to indicate there'll be more private rented accommodation, or, as the indicators are, if you speak to within the business sector, less, because private rented accommodation, which is probably 20%, 30% of the property in the borough, becomes less attractive to the owners to keep. And therefore, where do those people go if they decide to put the houses on the market? So I'd say I'd just express caution on that. I hope I'm wrong, and I hope we do achieve that saving, but I do not want to be sitting here in 6 months' time saying I did express this concern the whole way through the budget process. A simple question on page 33 on the healthier and stronger communities. I notice the arts hub, so that's halfway down. We're putting in £98,000 for the next 2 years, but then that stops in 2028. So I just wondered how we foresee the arts hub continuing beyond the 31st of March 2028 when the budget's been removed, or is it the fact that the arts hub's only seen as existing for 2 years? Going then on to a couple of things on capital.
If you've got more on the capital,
Yeah, two.
I think we'll just pause there to give the
okay.
Cabinet member a chance to
Right,
answer the ones that you've raised on the revenue. Councillor Summersgill, did you get all of those?
Sorry. Yes, the footbridge, I inferred you were thinking it was a separate footbridge. My understanding is it's alongside the railway bridge, not a separate one. Therefore, involving different people, rail track, and potentially with a different hat on, sometimes Rochester Bridge Trust in this. How will we do anything by October 2026? Well, we have to plan, assuming whether that happens or not. It's no use sitting around for 8 months and then saying, oh, it's not happened. Let's get on with stuff. So that's part of the planning of that. Inflation of 1.7%. Yep, government's saying that. There has been the Bank of England suggesting it's going to get down to 2% in the next couple of months. I mean, I don't see how, but that's the figures that they're applying, and that's what we've applied, presumably. Mr. Green?
We've taken a more cautious approach, or we've assumed a higher level of inflation than the government is allowing us in the settlement.
Reserves, economic development. My understanding, I maybe have been overtaken by this. It's 2/3 town, 1/3 rural. So £1 million for the town and 500,000 for rural. The 4 million minimum level of reserves. Well, yes, it is that we're in an excellent position. 4 million is the minimum. I wouldn't, being a Yorkshireman, want to spend everything we've got immediately and get down to £4,001. I think it's cautious to keep reserves at a certain level. We have indicated some of the reserves we're going to pull in. As for it being an endowment to a new authority, again, that's assuming that happens as well. Temporary housing savings, I note that you doubt it. It's been discussed at PACs, the housing pack. There is a technical reason why it's going down.
The figures for numbers that we're accommodating is actually going down, Councillor Harper. They're down to around 200 from a peak of 250 or 260. Plus, as you say, we're now able to accommodate a lot of those people in our own accommodation. So there's a lot of confidence that we can actually reduce the cost of temporary accommodation to the council.
And the last one I've got, the Arts Hub. The budget was to fund it for the first 2 years, and I don't know what happens after that. I don't know if Councillor.
I'll ask Mr. Green to speak on the item in a moment, but the figures as they've been explained to me are that it's been scoped at for the current period leading up to LGR, and then a pause is put in the figures to acknowledge what we know at this particular moment in time. Councillor Harper makes a good point about the question about continuity, and on that particular point of operational detail, I'd ask Mr. Green to pick it up from there. Thank you.
I don't think I can add an awful lot to that. The hope is that as the Arts Hub builds a level of business, it will become self-sustaining, but at the moment the commitment isn't beyond those first 2 years.
Thank you. Through the chair. Thank you. So does that answer all of...
No.
No, you want to come back. Okay, Councillor Harper.
The Arts Hub, I'd hope that we would be, as you say, looking towards seeking external funding for it to enable it to continue, and perhaps looking at things like the lottery and so on. But it would be a shame to see a new service closed down very quick, soon after it's just opened. On capital, there's just a couple of things I wanted to mention. And perhaps for Councillor Cook's information, if he looks on page 61, halfway down under planning and stronger, healthier communities, there is the line for public realm and greening relating to the town centre, with a total budget planned of £4.95 million, which may be pertinent to our discussions later this evening. My final point on capital, though, was the very last item on page 62, and it's kennelling, stray dog facility. And I noticed that in terms of the capital plan, that's one of the only items which isn't due to actually start until the year after Maidstone Council's been abolished. So I just wanted to understand a bit more about how can we earmark £2 million for a scheme which presumably will only be starting or after the cessation of Maidstone Council, or if not, or any work or planning done during the period of a Section 24 notice. It does seem to me rather unachievable.
Councillor Summersgill, back on those.
Thank you. Well, this is one of the things we're planning for the future, and whether we're abolished or not, as I've said in answer to other questions, this is being planned for that period of time. It needs timescale to plan in advance and find a site, and that's the year it's designated in the budget for capital.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey?
Can I just quickly come back on the Arts Hub? I mean, there is no, contrary to what you said, there is no desire and no plan to end it. it simply moved the funding into a more sustainable stream. And there are funding streams within the Arts Hub itself, such as the lease of the rooms and so forth. So that's it. There isn't a cut-off date. It is a long-term project rather than just a 2-year one.
Thank you. Councillor Cook next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I realised after you took the item about members' interests, and we have had mention this evening on page 27, the provision to establish an earmark reserve of £50,000 for the Healthy Living Centre. As I am chairman of the Fusion Healthy Living Centre in Maidstone, please could I take this opportunity to declare an interest in that particular item. I have no pecuniary interest in the item whatsoever, but I am chairman of the trustees of Fusion, so I need to declare that.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. That's noted. Councillor Perry, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. I've come to this paper a bit cold, but I was going through the figures, and on page 58, there's some interesting figures concerning Lock Meadow. There does seem to be a reduction in the, I assume, the net income. If I got my reading of the figures right, certainly it's a reduction. And I was wondering how confident we are for the future, because there seems to be a steady reduction in this on this whole area, and I'm just wondering how confident we are in the future for the Lock Meadow. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. Councillor Summersgill, take that one.
Yes, I'll pass to Mr. Green, but do you mean the Lock Meadow or Lock Meadow complex? There's two lines there. Yes. The complex line. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perry. When we are looking at Lock Meadow, we obviously have to take into account the fact that it's a commercial business, it's generating revenue from tenants. Now, what this is showing is overall, if you look at the total for Lock Meadow, a reduction in income from 683,000 for this year to 278,000 for next year. And the main reason for that is that Gravity, a tenant at Lock Meadow, is in administration and we're not collecting rent from them. And although we hope that we'll find another tenant in due course, we can't be sure of that. So we're taking quite a cautious view for next year so far as Lock Meadow is concerned. But the long-term ambition is to get back to where we were in terms of income from Lock Meadow. And I just add that there was reference to investment of some one-off money of 250,000 for Lock Meadow. And what that is doing is looking at the overall strategy for the complex, taking into account not just the leisure complex, but also the surroundings, Coronation Square and the Market Hall, with a view to making Lock Meadow not just a commercially viable proposition, but also something that will contribute to bringing people into the town centre, making it a really exciting attraction for the town.
Thank you. Councillor Perry, did you want to come back on that?
So quickly, yeah. I mean, what I notice is the level of expenditure is quite significant, without the income. It seems to me it's quite a high risk, isn't it, this whole project? Would you assume that? Because it's taxpayers' money we're looking at here, and I'm just wondering how good an investment this really is. Thank you.
You're right that it's a commercial enterprise, so there's always risks associated with that. But if you look at the net position, which is 683,000 for this year, 278,000, it is still generating net cash. We do have some very good tenants at Lock Meadow, And so overall, it's generating a financial return for the council. We'd like it to deliver more, but it is net positive in the cash that it generates.
Thank you, Mr. Green. I've got Councillor Mackay next.
Thank you. I've nearly forgotten what I was going to ask then. But coming back to Councillor Harper, talking about whether we should be planning for things beyond Maidstone Borough Council. We plan to merge with three other authorities. I hope we have very positive plans to bring into that new group for the long, short, medium and long term. If we don't have positive plans, then none of them will go ahead. So please, Maidstone Borough Council may not exist in 2 years' time, but there will be a need for an authority with that hopefully we join an authority that is progressive and wants to see a viable community. So please don't. Please carry on and look ahead. Look beyond, let's look at, it's likely to be West Kent, I think, authority. Yes. Yeah. That's all.
It's likely to be whatever central government chooses. But let's not stray into LGR. On a question from me is, you mentioned it earlier, but I just wanted a bit more clarity. The New River Medway Bridge, what is that? Is it because it says new, but then you mentioned that it was the one along the railway line, so I just wanted to make sure.
So again, very early thinking. There are, I think, three main pedestrian routes and cycle routes over the River Medway at the moment. There's a cycle route and a pedestrian route across the gyratory, one on each side. There is a pedestrian only across the high level bridge, and there are an awful lot of bicycles going over there down a very thin path. So the current thinking is extending, effectively putting a second bridge right alongside the existing bridge, so that we can segregate the cyclists from the pedestrians and the 1,000+ kids that walk over there every morning, so that both can travel actively across the Medway without crashing into each other.
Okay. And sort of building on that really, as most of the capital programme is related to the town centre, and obviously I represent a rural ward, as a lot of my fellow councillors do, there doesn't seem to be as much in there for us. And I think it is a bit disappointing in the whole of the capital programme that we couldn't find the money to at least start some of the work on the Leeds Langley Relief Road, because that is what the south of the borough really needs. If we're talking capital, things spelt on capital, I get that bridge is going to be great for cyclists in the town centre, but what about us and our area? And I'll move on to Councillor Cook now.
Madam Chairman, you've just mentioned the thing I was going to raise. I dread to think of my name being associated with any meeting where a budget's, and I don't mention at some point the Leeds Langley Relief Road. I've been mentioning it for 20 years. So thank you for mentioning that. I'm interested to note that we are mentioning amounts of money and income that our commercial enterprises might be generating, which presumably can't in any way affect or compromise the commercial judgment that's associated with that, because obviously we seem to have papers this evening that are mentioned in the budget in other parts, but we can't mention publicly. So just a bit strange, inconsistent.
Okay, thank you, committee, for all of those. I'm not seeing anyone else indicating, and I've not heard any proposals. So on that basis, I move to the recommendations on the paper. No. Oh. the urgent update recommendations on the extra paper that looks like that, which is, there's 14 of them. So the only additional one is the last one, 14, which was not in the original papers, and that is because we have the updated fees and charges paperwork as well on our desks, if I can actually find it, which is these ones, look like that. So, Councillor Harper, quickly.
Actually, it's on this urgent update. I just wanted to clarify with Councillor Thompson the issue about those fees for the museum, where it was around about the cost of a family ticket compared to individual tickets. Has that been reflected in this? Because obviously I haven't had a chance to read it in detail.
I asked the question, I was assured that it was, and Mr Green is here, and if he wants some more details on those numbers.
Councillor Field might be able to spot it quickly because you did it at the original meeting. Can you spot which page that's on if it's been updated?
Pass me by, forgive me, I haven't had time to go through these in detail. I do recall that a family ticket was marginally more expensive than buying individual tickets. But
yes, it was corrected. I did check the maths. It's
okay, just through the chair, please. Yeah, it's been updated on. We're in page 2 of the fees and charges, and we've got an adult's £5, a child's £2.50, and the family ticket is £13.50. No, that's still more expensive.
Well, it's 2 adults and 3 children.
Oh, 2 adults, which means that's for 2 adults and 3 children. So that has been updated. Thank you. And that was the point that was raised previously. So those changes have gone in. So on that basis, we've got very quickly, Councillor Cook.
And ask the officers in future to adopt. This is an urgent update. When you look at the size of print on this and trying to make head nor tail, I can barely read that. Now that may be due to my eyesight, which doesn't bode well for my future as a driver. Yeah, I might need to borrow it. But
okay,
is it
point
not
taken. Fees and charges are always tiny, but our democratic services officer.
Well, the fees and charges are getting larger, but so should the print.
The print. But he said he will print it. Can we come to order, please? He will print it in a bigger font for the next time we have anything like this. So, thank you. Right, so third time lucky. On that basis, we move to the recommendations, which are on the extra pack, and we've got 14 of them. So can I see votes in favour? And votes against? No abstentions. Thank you. That closes that item. And that takes us on to item 15, which is the receipt of the call-in Earl Street Public Realm Improvement Scheme. And the report will be introduced by the Leader of the Council, Councillor Jeffrey. Over to you.
So I'm not sure where. Usually, I thought the call of Ina let this introduced it, but so the Earl Street regeneration has been an idea that's been knocking around for quite some time. Certainly predates me, and we have obviously got a point now, and taking into consideration both Councillor Harper's and Councillor Mackay's points about looking forward and making sure we've got good plans in place. We want to make sure we've landed a few things and we're handing over a few things for the future. So this report went to PAC and then Cabinet earlier this month. It sets out a plan for a workup of an employment of consultants and workup of schemes, a scheme for the pedestrianisation of Earl Street, and then the appointment of contractors. The plan that is set out and on one of the pages in a second, has a break or a return point in July, I believe it is, to pack and cabinet, once we've got an idea of the schema of the layout of the pedestrianisation, and then the report recommends that a contractor be appointed. There is in the recommendations there was a maximum of 3% over budget that it relates to the final the yellow pages, and so there is a cap on the money. One of the reasons, a couple of the reasons for the way it's set out, the procurement aspect is done by officers rather than members. We could have put in an extra pack and cabinet in there. We have got, I'm really keen that we get this over the line and we get the contract signed with the contractor before the Section 21 notice comes in. It will, if we don't, we will have to go to a joint committee of the new geography, and that will be risky. It's a large sum of money that we're putting forward to do this with, and we are therefore introducing significant risks if we have to persuade, for example, Kent County Council to agree to do this. So I think it would add significant risks for an extra pack cabinet round of discussion. Hence, we've set it out in a project that allows us the process and governance to take it forward and get and hopefully, because there's still risk, hopefully getting a contract signed before that Section 24 notice comes in, and we're assuming that's going to arrive at the beginning of October. Jen, what have I missed?
I don't think anything really. As I said at the pack, there is that sort of break within it in June, July. Once we have that concept design to come back to the pack, come back to Cabinet for the go-ahead based on that design, and also based on the feedback from all the stakeholders. I know a key part is making sure that businesses, residents, visitors, everyone has their say. And Kent County Council is the Highways Authority, and so we do need to capture all of that, and then we need to come back and obviously demonstrate that we've considered all of that, come up with a concept design for the final agreement. But as Councillor Jeffrey said, the procurement part can take a long period of time, and there will need to be an element of overlapping, getting everything aligned, so we can then get agreement and get that contract signed ahead of the sort of October deadline.
Thank you. And just to let you know that obviously it was Councillor Harper, Councillor Dawes and myself that called it in, and Councillor Dawes, thank you so much for coming as a visiting member this evening. So before we open it up to the committee, and over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Chair. I call it in because it is a large sum of money. We're not going to discuss what it is, but I understand the principle of wanting to improve the Maidstone Town Centre, but it is taxpayers' monies that have also been spent from the rural community, and it's on the streets with a lot of restaurants that are chain restaurants, they're not even independent. We have the hospitality is struggling everywhere, even in my ward, and I'm sure in Marden's. And so it's a big bonus that's going to be given to big chains of restaurants that other little business in the countrysides won't be able to benefit. So that's where I'm struggling, and seeing how the town centre have been suffering over the past years. Maybe I'm just seeing it dark, but with shops being closed and everything, I'm not exactly sure it's a wise spend of taxpayers' money in a cost of living crisis. So I would have loved to see that money being useful to what matter most to Maidstone, which is the traffic, which is trying to have a relief road, trying to have a bridge that is not medieval in the south of Maidstone, that kind of things.
Thank you. Very succinctly put, Councillor Dawes. I've got Councillor Harper next. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. As people know, I'm the chairman or the chair of the Planning and Stronger Healthier Communities Policy Advisory Committee, and I do not move resolutions or seek unanimity in decision making for the fun of it. I do it at the committee and elsewhere to ensure that the council is likely to make the best possible decisions on the information available. On this item, there was a long debate at the committee and a lot of points were raised and considered. All members of the committee, including members of the Green Party, Liberal Democrats, Labour and Conservative parties, came to a joint consensus and our decision was made unanimously. The Policy Advisory Committee supported the proposals in terms of the outline to achieve this revitalisation of Earl Street, and we supported and endorsed spending up to £100,000 to get the proposals up to design stage. But what the Policy Advisory Committee and what I'm asking and what we asked at the meeting was that once we had the results of the planning stage, that proposals would then come forward to seek permission to spend X million pounds on the implementation. Clearly there's a figure in our capital budget we've proposed tonight. We looked at the timeline in the report and we sought clarifications from the officers present and the cabinet members present that this could be achieved. And at that stage, neither dissented to it coming back to a policy advisory round and cabinet round to give final approval to spending this level of money. The timeline requires a report back to the Planning and Healthy Stronger Communities Pack and Cabinet in June, July, as the leaders just mentioned. And we thought that that would give us the scope to make an approval on the implementation costs at that stage. We are aware, and the committee did have this discussion around the likely timing of a Section 24 notice coming in the autumn, and based on our discussions we've had over the last 3 months on all the policy advisory committees, overview and scrutiny, and full council, in terms of when we're likely to receive a Section 24 notice, it was felt that at that stage, if we had it in the budget, and it's clearly in the budget to be spent over a number of years, that that would be sufficient to enable the work to proceed, and that we would not be in the situation perhaps the leaders explained tonight, where if we don't have contracts signed by the 31st of October, we're unable to do any project except with the permission of Kent County Council and whatever other councils we merge with. But Kent County Council was pretty definite. They're going to be 3/4 of any new unitary we go into. We don't want to see this project fail. It could be a really good legacy for this borough and enable a revitalisation of our town centre. But I would ask tonight for this committee to adopt option 2 and the request that the Cabinet take in the June-July plan meetings indicative budgets for the proposals. They don't have to be, I was going to say concrete, don't have to be definitive, but indicative, because by that stage the officers will have worked up what they're planning to do in terms of Earl Street. They'll have had a lot of the discussions with Kent County Council. So in June, when we come through with the next round of meetings, we should have an idea of the likely costs. I mean, it'd be ballpark, might be 1 million, 2 million, 3 million, 4 million, 5, 6, 7, 8. But there will be an idea of the type of costs involved. And it would seem to me that that could be on that agenda item in June, July. The other item, I think, perhaps is a slight aside to this, but I've mentioned this to Stuart earlier today. I feel one of the things we don't seem to see when you look at cabinet agendas, they don't ever seem to have written updates of discussions of policy advisory committees. So, for instance, at the cabinet meeting where this item was considered, they weren't given any written update as to what the policy advisory committee had discussed a couple of days beforehand. And I don't think this is the first time this has happened. So I would ask that as part of our process to improve transparency and to show the importance of having policy advisory committees, that we ensure that committee services automatically publish draft minutes of the decisions so that they can be laid on the table for not just the Cabinet but members of the public and others to actually see that we are making decisions based on as much input as possible. So I'd like to formally move tonight, and I'm moving the following two recommendations. One, that the committee adopt option 2 and request that the Cabinet take in the June-July plan meetings indicative budgets for the proposals, as by that stage indicative estimates should be known. And secondly, that decisions made by a policy advisory committee or any other committee to the Cabinet be submitted as an update to the published papers for transparency and to improve decision making. Thank you.
Thank you. As the third person to call in, here's where I am with it, and I just want to pick up on some of the points that Councillor Harper's made there. So we all sit on PACs, obviously, to give policy shaping advice that then goes forward. And like Councillor Harper said, we unanimously agreed that we would remove the recommendation 2, which was the capital budget for the proposed project as shown in exempt appendix 1 to the report be approved. Now, the reason we did that was because it's a large amount of money that isn't our money, and the plans at the moment are fairly vague. The report is quite vague, and we got clarification from the officers that it wouldn't alter the timeline at all in that meeting to bring back a report in June and July with a further decision-making milestone, if you like, to say, yes, that's the plan, excellent, go ahead with this capital money. And that was confirmed, that we weren't altering any need for urgency, we weren't changing the proposed milestones. So on that basis, we put in another balance and check, which I think is our role as elected members, and certainly is one of the role of Scrutiny Committee, to keep that balance and check on taxpayers' money. That actually did get fed forward to the Cabinet, and I've just seen that where they did get the recommendations from the PAC, so that was captured and it was sent forward, and it said that we had removed, or the recommendation was to remove item 2, yes, item number 2, but it wasn't, the recommendations that Cabinet voted on weren't altered in that regard. So on that basis, I'm happy to second Councillor Harper's proposal, because I do think we need that extra level of scrutiny and that very sensible milestone that would be bring us back another report that doesn't change your timeline, that says what we want to spend the money on, and then we can see if that is a good idea. It doesn't stop the initial amount of money to get the project started going in the meantime. So that's where I am with it. And I've got Councillor Higson, Councillor Field and Councillor Mackay in that order. So Councillor Higson, over to you.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Okay, first off, Maidstone Town is a destination. It's a place where we want people to go and enjoy themselves, and to, you know, the daytime economy and the nighttime economy. And frankly, it doesn't really matter whether or not we've got chain restaurants or independents. They're providing jobs for our community. So, you know, that's first off. And you know, secondly, the area that we're talking about, actually, it would join up other pedestrianised areas and make it more of a sort of a proper pedestrianised area. I also have a little issue with the calling form itself, particularly the last bit where it says about the proposed works can be completed before the dissolution of Maidstone Borough Council. It seems a little contradictory to ask for further sort of roadblocks, if you will, and then say that it will achieve things being completed before the dissolution of the council. So it seems quite contradictory in terms of the desired outcome that's written there. It would seem to me that the issue is the figure that we can't talk about, but that's another issue altogether.
I think taking that point on board, that wouldn't be an issue for tonight if we agreed the recommendation to put that extra milestone in. So that, fits in with the process. I've got Councillor Field next and then Councillor Mackay after. So Councillor Field.
Thanks, Chair. I'm kind of struggling with the, as Councillor Hickson put it, the contradictions here. In this committee this evening, we've discussed not wanting to make endowments to successor authorities and concerns about the urgency of getting things done before Section 24 comes in. The papers appear to me to put in sensible safeguards. The number that you're going to see in June is the number that we're all not allowed to talk about this evening. You've already had the number, you've got the number again this evening. I don't believe anybody on the Policy Advisory Committee is going to provide any civil engineering or procurement expertise that is likely to change that number. We have a clear 3% cap on overspend before the entire project has to come back through the PAC and Cabinet process again. And frankly, I'm a little bit uncomfortable here that what appears to be happening is that the Policy Advisory Committee has made a request, the Cabinet has considered the request, the safeguards have been put forward as documented here, and now Overview and Scrutiny is being asked to put exactly the same request back to the Cabinet after it has declined to follow that particular line of advice. Unless we're putting something new across here, and given, as I say, these contradictions around urgency and our balanced capital budget, we've just signed off the MTFS, we're all happy we've got a sensible capital plan, none of us that I'm aware of are going to provide meaningful civil engineering or procurement expertise that is not already available to Cabinet through the relevant officers. I'm just not sure what's happening here other than that there's a big number written on a piece of paper that's frightening people a little bit. And big numbers are scary, but they are big numbers. It's going to cost KCC £6 million to put a roundabout in up the road. To a layperson, that seems like a lot of money for a roundabout. This big scary number looks like a big scary number for pedestrianising a couple of 100 metres of a street in the town. But us being scared of the big scary number and keep asking officers to bring the big scary number back so that we can look at it again and say, oh, it's public money, and even though we've got very, very comfortable reserves, a balanced budget and an assured capital plan, we want to stare at the number again and have a little panic about it. Can't see it adds value with the timescale that we have as that additional aspect on the impending Section 24 notice. So on that basis, I just can't see what value is being added for Maidstone Borough Council's council taxpayers, regardless of which part of the borough they're from. Would also echo that much as I, as somebody who lives in the town, enjoy going down to visit rural pubs and other rural amenities, I'm sure people who live in Marden and Staplehurst and so on and so forth enjoy coming to the town for a night out. So we have to spend money in both places, and again, the capital budget is balanced, as has been described in the medium-term financial strategy that we all just signed off. So I can't see a reason to support it as documented.
Thank you for mansplaining it to me, but the big scary number is not...
Sorry, I do object to that. I did not mansplain anything. I gave you my opinion.
Okay, thank you. I'll retract that. But the reason for calling it in was because we are allowed to scrutinise it, and very different people sit on this committee to sit on the PACs. Hardly anyone on the PAC sits on this committee, and that is one of our functions, that we are allowed to call things.
I'm going to come back on that point because this keeps coming up. Every member of the council, as Councillor Dawes has done this evening, is free to attend any committee and make a contribution. Any of us can read the papers, and the chair of this particular committee is sitting over there. It is nonsense to say that I didn't have an opportunity to give my opinion on this at a prior point in the process.
That wasn't what I was saying. I was saying Scrutiny does deliver a separate function to the Policy Advisory Committee, so we are allowed, it is perfectly allowable to look at decisions after they've been made. That is one of the functions of Scrutiny. We do pre-decision scrutiny and we do post-decision scrutiny. And I wouldn't want members to feel they couldn't call something here just because it had been to a PAC, because this is one of the functions of our committee, and it's perfectly allowable to have post-decision scrutiny, although I completely take on board that you don't agree with it coming here, or the proposal, or the seconder, which is absolutely within your right.
I didn't say that I don't agree with post-decision scrutiny. Okay. I said that I was uncomfortable that it's exactly the same as the Cabinet has already been asked to do once. The process by which it got here is absolutely fine, but unless we are going to scrutinise this and come up with a different ask, I think it's
the point
a bit
that we
of
were
a
making
moot
was
point.
very slightly different in that what we were saying is we didn't feel that the recommendations from the pack had been followed through to the Cabinet. If it was in fact, and I'll go to the leader next, that he had the recommendations from the pack, he looked at them all, he saw that it wouldn't alter the timeline and decided to go with the original recommendations, that's a very different reason than why we called it in. So perhaps the leader would enlighten us on that, and then I'll go to Councillor Mackay. Thank you.
I can enlighten you on that. I'd like to come back on some other points, but I can do that separately afterwards if you like. Yes, the recommendations were tabled at the Cabinet. I do agree with Councillor Harper's points about them not being published on the website, and that's a conversation I'm very happy to have with them services about whether that's possible and how that might happen, because I think that would be a really good idea if we could. And I do remember asking the Cabinet, and with my memory is fairly good, I'm pretty certain that I said we have got to update in an urgent update, and hopefully people have read that. So we were certainly aware, and we had those papers.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mackay, I've got you next on my list, then got Councillor Cook, and finally Councillor Kahili so far.
Thank you very much. Gabriel's Hill and Week Street have been pedestrianised now for 10 years. Would anybody want us to row back on that? I don't think so. And unfortunately, I've been around long enough to vaguely remember that at the time, Earl Street was part of that plan. But the funds run out. But I may be wrong on that, but I don't think I am. And when I heard about recently the idea of making Earl Street pedestrianised, my immediate reaction was about bloody time as well. I mean, I actually do visit the theatre regularly, and I do eat probably far too much in Earl Street. And I went there this morning and I had breakfast. And I took the opportunity to meet for the first time the owners of Fredericks, Ulrich, who has been through this for the last 10, 15 years. Now, I'm not saying I agree with him on every point, because I think there are some issues regarding access for people with disabilities and this sort of thing. And so I'm hoping the council will take that on board. I think the proposal, I think someone said, we want to make Maidstone a destination for people. And this will enhance the appeal of Maidstone across the county. We are the county town. It will make Earl Street more attractive, more appealing. The argument that a lot of the restaurants are chains, I don't remember that argument coming up when it came to Week Street being pedestrianised and saying, oh yeah, but Marks and Spencer's is up there. Yeah? It's irrelevant who's up there. As someone has already said, all these restaurants are creating employment opportunities for the town. And the more people that come into the town, the more job opportunities there are, the more work there is for taxis. We can always argue about sometimes the devil is in the detail, but the principle of what is being proposed is 100% right. And putting slight obstacles, as Mr. Harper would say, possibly, I'd say just get on with it. Make it happen. Make Maidstone better. Bring it on.
Thank you, Councillor Mackay. I've got Councillor Cook next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My memory probably doesn't go back as far as Councillor Mackay's does, but it does go back to just over 5 years ago when KCC came forward with a programme which is linked to a large sum of money that was devolved down to local governments for the purposes of promoting active travel and pedestrianisation. And there was a plan in 2020 from KCC to pedestrianise Earl Street. There was a number of others throughout the county. The amount of money that the county was going to spend across the whole of the county is in a report that's still in the public domain. But the Earl Street pedestrianisation was something that was put out to consultation, and the consultation actually did not come back very positively. There was a huge uproar from taxi drivers who said they could not pick up and deposit clients in Earl Street with the proposals that were coming forward. So much so was and this was just based on a trial. So much so was the uproar that was created at that time that the proposals and the pedestrian and the work that was done had to be reversed, and it was put back to as it was before. So I'm interested to understand what consultation is being undertaken by interested local parties, because I think that's important, especially given the level of money that is being associated with this and is in the budget, coupled to that the level of risk that everyone seems to be saying it is risky, and I just think given that risk, I think this is a good thing to bring to overview and scrutiny. But my preference with something like this would have been to go for option 3 rather than option 2. I think to take it back to council, although I do understand that might have delayed things a little bit more and made things even more risky. Nevertheless, I do think that there are some lessons to be learnt from what happened in 2020 when KCC, as the Highways Authority, was seeking to pedestrianise Earl Street. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Good point raised there about consultation, so I'll just go to the leader on that one, if you could outline what's happening with that.
I can. I can tell you that in the main report that we took, there is a consultation and engagement strategy that will be coming back to PAC in July. Jen, you might have more detail on that. By the way, I would like to come back on the other points at some point as well.
Exactly that. Obviously, as part of that pre-work where we're setting aside the 100,000 includes various expertise and consultants, and part of that is the urban design and also the full stakeholder consultation as part of that. We have done informal discussions with KCC already with the Highways Authority, and This is not something they raised as a roadblock, certainly. They felt that it was a good opportunity and were very supportive. But the full consultation will involve residents, as I said, the Highways Authority, businesses, taxi drivers, anyone visiting the site. And I think if you notice, whilst the term pedestrianisation is being used here, what actually is in the brief and in the papers is a reduction of vehicle prominence. There is an acceptance that there will need to be some element of access, as there already is in Week Street and Gabriel's Hill and all of those. So it will be built into those designs and be full consultation as part of that process. Plus then, once it goes to planning, it'll go through the vigorous part of it then as well. But obviously we want to be ahead of the game and make sure we're consulting and get everyone on board before we get to those points. But said, we'll bring all that back in June, July.
Thank you. Stuart, did you want to come back on some of those points now? Because then I've got Councillor Keeley and Councillor Harper, and I think that's last. Yeah, fine. Councillor Keeley?
Thank you, Chair. Just as to be an absolute pedant for my first point, it was not unanimous because I actually abstained because then my questions weren't answered and I didn't know what to think because there were still points in my head, so it was an abstention from me because I remember commenting it was the first time I've ever abstained. My other point is I hear exactly what Councillor Dawes is saying and yourself about the rural communities. I'm completely up for the scheme. I think it's a really good scheme. I think it would be worth us all, I think we all support it. I think the figure is the thing that we are all going, and it is a big figure, I understand that, but I think we also need to consider, would we be as happy putting that kind of figure into something that works for the rural communities? For example, this is a really great scheme. I really like the idea of it, but I have to drive in to come and join that after a certain time because there are no buses. There are other things that we could do. I mean, I'm sure if half of Maidstone descended on all the local village pubs, they'd all go bonkers. But some of those people from rural would like to come in and not bring their car. And it's a 20 quid taxi fare to my house. So, public transport for rural at the weekend, there are none where I am, and that would be when I would be wanting to use it, and I wouldn't want you to spend a 20 quid taxi in and a 20 quid taxi home, because that's pretty much my meal, let alone having a few drinks. But otherwise, great, thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Keeley. Councillor Harper?
I was going to use my right to reply to the debate, but if the leader's going to speak, he should speak first, because I can't reply to the debate if you let him speak after.
Perfect, yeah. Councillor Jeffrey?
Yeah, no problem. I've got a lot of points. I'll quickly whip through them. Councillor Dawes asked why spend money in a cost of living crisis. Well, it depends if you're a Keynesian or a Thatcherite. I'm a Keynesian. If it's in the Paul asked about if it's in the budget, can it then proceed if the 24 notice comes in? We don't know what's going to be the requirements of the 24 notice. What we're seeing in others is that we're not allowed to sign contracts over a certain level. So I'm assuming that despite it being in the budget, if the contract's not signed, we've still got to go to a joint committee. But we don't know for certain. Indicative proposed budget, well, that's in the paper. You've raised that, Paul. Claudine, you talked about coming back in July for further balances and checks. Well, to me, the PAC cabinet return, it covers that. So I kind of think that is our balance and check in terms of a stop point, but accept your point to a degree. But yeah, and we've got that in the paper. Councillor McKay talked about disabled access. That was mentioned by me at the cabinet meeting and will be part of the consultation and work up, because I'm very aware that in order to, and I've written down make Earl Street great again, we need to be careful about disabled access. Who's GC? Gary. With regards to the consultation bit I've written down, the risk bit that I flagged was timing rather than money, but that my concerns on risk are purely timing. Claire, you mentioned rural communities. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. We're going out with, we've got the SIL money we've gone back out with. I'm hoping, and I've kind of nudged KCC about Linton Crossroads in particular. We've got £500,000 going into the rural economy stuff. We've got no plans as such for that, so we're going to be looking at that. And as somebody pointed out earlier, there's still a load of money sitting in the reserves, and I believe the process generally in terms of reserves is we come back to them post-budget and have another review. So I'm as keen as you to get some buses running. If that's an idea, we can have a further discussion on it. I don't want to put all the money into the town centre, but I really want to make sure we're balancing it across the whole borough. I think I've covered all the points. Thank you.
Councillor Harper.
Thank you, Chair. It's been interesting listening to the comments raised tonight, because it's very similar to the discussion we actually had at the Policy Advisory Committee. But what it isn't, it doesn't really address the issue of the call-in. We all agreed at Policy Advisory Committee that this was a good scheme. We all referred to the timeline, which we've got on page 25, and the idea is that this project should be completed by November 2027. So I don't know why Councillor Field thought we were going to be after dissolution. That's going to be a minimum of 5 months prior to the new council coming in. So this will be something finished off during the lifetime of this council, which is one of the things we thought was very important, and I see Jen nodding, that we know we've got some assurance that we've got the scope here to get this project done. Clearly, it's all subject to the consultations, especially you have with Kent County Council, because at the end of the day, they're the Highways Authority, not us. But assuming that that's all positive, this project can be delivered by November 27, well in advance of dissolution. I, for one, don't have a problem with spending big sums of money. I've been championing on this council for the last 5 years of spending 20 to 30 million pounds on a leisure centre for the residents of Maidstone Town and the wider borough. You know, it's going to cost that much money for a project like that. The money available for this project is probably quite reasonable. We just need the assurance, which I understand the leader's not disagreeing with, that we will receive hopefully in the June-July cycle, when we will seek indicative costings, so that then we're in a situation to go through Policy Advisory Committee, onto the Cabinet, and then out to pre-planning application. Our track record as a council, unfortunately, with pre-planning and planning committee decisions on our own land, has not been good. Half of our 1,000 affordable homes, or quality homes, whichever policy we want to be called, has been delayed when we've actually taken up to pre-planning and planning committee. Maidstone East is the classic, where the thing's been pushed back for whatever reasons, but you know, the biggest potential delay to this whole project is when it goes to Maidstone Planning Committee in July 2026. If it's not approved at that committee, and I say our track record of approving our own schemes is mixed, then we won't achieve any of this timeline, and it will all slip back, including when the appointment of the contractors and so on, which we're looking at in September 26, can be achieved by. Our suggestion tonight has no impact on the timeline whatsoever. What it does do is just to reiterate comments we've heard tonight from the leader and the chief officer, that in the June-July committee period, we will have the indicative costings, so that we're in a far better situation to have an idea as to, is this likely to come in on the target figure we're hoping for? Is it going to be under, which would be excellent, because then we could pay for some buses within that budget? Or is it going to be over, in which case we might need to think of potential shrinkage? We've no idea until we get there, but June, July is the critical time. So all we're asking is, in June and July, that indicative budgets are made available as part of the process. Because if they're not, then we are in grave danger, I feel, of the scheme actually slipping. What we're trying to do is tie it down to ensure that we can achieve this time scale because, you know, it's ambitious. We all want to get it done, but please do support the amendments. It's not derailing anything. In fact, I think it strengthens the timeline procedure we have before us.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, just discussing. So the proposal that we've got on the table, seconded, is request that the indicative cost of the scheme be brought back to PHSC PAC for approval when the item returns in June or July 2026. Can I have votes in favour? Those against? Thank you. And then, minded by what was also raised and the leader answered, I propose that a second recommendation, that feedback made by PACS or any other committee be submitted as an urgent update to Cabinet reports for decision making. Have I got a seconder for that? Councillor Harper. So, sorry. Thank you. I'm not altering it, it's just altering it. So that feedback made by PACS or any other committee be published online for decision making. Yep. So that's been proposed and seconded. Votes in favour? Thank you, that's carried. Excellent, that concludes that item. Thank you, everybody. So that takes us on to item 16, which is our annual report. Pages 153 to 165 of your agenda packs. This annual report provides a summary of the work of our committee in the last municipal year. So we've got in there the completed reviews on trust, empty properties and the sealed charging schedule. We've got the start of the housing review. We've had 2 call-in requests and we've done 12 pre-decision items conducted to date. So we will be, or I will be, presenting this for approval to Council on the 19th of February. We can amend it if necessary. Sorry, 25th of February, the Council, sorry. And it can be amended if necessary. Has anyone got any comments that they want to make on our report? Can't see anybody indicating, so thank you. That was our last item for this evening. I now declare this meeting closed.